Hello, I'm MeshCentral, and in this video we're going to talk about Intel AMT Configuration and Intel AMT CIRA. So Intel Active Management Technology, or Intel AMT, is a way for you to remotely manage a device even if your software agent is not installed on it, or even if the computer is soft off or the OS doesn't work. And the way that works is that the Intel AMT agent is built into the hardware of the machine. So I have an Intel NUC here that has AMT, and as long as you're connected on the official built-in wireless interface, or you're connected using the Ethernet port that is provided with the device, and no other internet connection will do. It has to be either the built-in wireless Wi-Fi or this Ethernet port. But if you do that, then the built-in AMT can connect or get connections from the management server, and you can do a lot of other things. So let's take a look at just how that works. So normally you would have a remote computer with a mesh agent on it, and it would connect back to your MeshCentral server. Now, the Intel AMT acts as a second agent that is built into the hardware. And so you go through the mesh agent to configure Intel AMT, and then if you're in LAN mode or you're on the same network, then you can have the MeshCentral server connect back to AMT and do remote management. Or if you are in WAN mode or hybrid mode, and so you're in the cloud, you're maybe hosted on Azure or AWS or Google, and you have the mesh agent installed. Mesh agent will call back to the server. This is how you manage a computer. But now you can also configure AMT to call back to MeshCentral, and you will be able to manage the computer through the hardware of AMT this way. CIRA stands for Client Initiated Remote Access. So that's the tunnel protocol, connection name that is we call the connection between AMT and the server. So if you don't use CIRA, you're probably on a local network, like the first slide. And if you use CIRA, you're probably on the internet. And this is the second slide. So let's take a look at this in practice. So I have my trusty MeshCentral server on the left here. This is the latest version. It is currently in hybrid mode, so LAN and WAN. That means that I can receive connections from the internet, but I can also I allow the server to make connections to local AMT devices on the local network. So on the right side, you have all my normal computers. And in this case, I'm going to focus on AMT 15 here, and it has Intel AMT. It's currently powered. It has an agent on it. So I can click on it. I can say desktop, connect, and we have the normal remote desktop that we would have as expected. Now, if you have AMT, when you click on the device, you'll have an additional line here, and it will tell you what AMT version you have, how it's configured, if it's not configured, and if it is configured, is it configured with TLS or not, and so on. So that's interesting right there. So you can quickly find out which machines have AMT. You can also go into the details panel, and below here, you'll have an AMT section, and it will also give you that information. And also here it tells you AMT credentials are known. That means that the server knows the credentials to connect to that AMT machine, and so it can manage it. If the credential is not known, then you'll be given the opportunity to enter it, and then MeshCentral can manage your computer. Also, if you have AMT, you'll have another tab here for Active Management Technology. If your AMT is activated, if it's running, then and you have connectivity to it on the local network or through CIRA, then this tab will allow you to connect, and you'll have a bunch of stuff you can do, including remote access to the computer. You can see serial over LAN, hardware. There's a whole bunch of features here that I won't go through right now. Now, if you're on the desktop or the terminal tab and you have AMT active, then there's the connect and the hardware connect. The connect will do the remote desktop through the agent, and the hardware connect will go and do remote desktop through AMT. So if we click hardware connect here, you'll notice that it works. Now, there's some limitations. Obviously, you can't send things to the clipboard. You can't exchange files with AMT because it's not running in the OS. But what happens is that the graphics adapter inside the CPU will scrape the buffer, encode it, compress it, and send it over to the server and then to the browser here so that it's rendered. So that's how it works. And for the mouse and keyboard, what's going on is that AMT is making USB devices available to the OS, one mouse and one keyboard. And so the OS looks like from the OS perspective, it looks like there's additional input devices that are connected. And then when you move the mouse, that's what those devices send the information to the operating system or to the BIOS. So that's how that works. Okay, so if you have a bunch of computers with AMT, the first thing you want to do is go into your device groups, and there's going to be an Intel AMT line, and this is where you can set up your Intel AMT policy. And as soon as you set up the policy, then all the computers inside the device group should start to match up that policy. So there is a no policy. If you select that, then just nothing happens. MeshCentral will not do anything. It will not try to activate or deactivate. It will just leave all the machines the way they are. So if you're using other software to manage AMT, then you can just put no policy here, and that's great. If you say deactivate, then MeshCentral will try to turn off AMT or deactivate AMT on all the remote machines. Then there's CCM, client control mode, and ACM modes. This is the way you activate AMT. I won't get into the details of that now. And then there's full automatic. In that case, you're just letting basically me, the developer of MeshCentral, with my colleague, decide how to best use AMT. Now, I'm going to use the ACM and just go through here the settings. So I want to set up AMT in active control, in admin control mode. I want to randomize the password. So whenever you activate a machine, put a random password on it. CCM mode, don't change if it's CCM, keep it. Deactivate CCM or activate to CCM if ACM fails. So you can do whatever you prefer here. Unknown password, do nothing, or if it's CCM, reactivate. So basically, if the MeshCentral server encounters an AMT and it tries different passwords and none of them work, what it could do is it can deactivate and reactivate the machine in CCM and then put a known password to it. And then the last one is CIRA setup, and this is the one I want to focus on this video, which is, do you want to basically do nothing? That means if AMT has any settings for CIRA, leave it alone, or here, don't connect to server. That means actively tell AMT not to connect to the server, to not activate CIRA, or go ahead and connect to the server. So that means actively configure all the AMT device to connect to the server. So I want to just point out before I change the policy that all these machines here, it says AMT, AMT, AMT. That means that these machines have AMT accessible on the local network. And so AMT 15 here, AMT machine 15 says AMT. That means it's reachable on local network. Now I'm going to go change the policy, and I'm going to say connect to server, say OK. And then I'm going to come back. And as soon as I change the policy to tell all my AMT machines, go ahead and activate CIRA, connect back to the server, it will take maybe 30 seconds to a minute. And AMT's MeshCentral is actively configuring all the machines. And you're going to see here CIRA pop up there. And then CIRA just popped up here. Then I expect these two at some point to also show CIRA. So it's going to take a little bit here, but at least we see it there. And we see it there. Let's see. Yeah, it's not showing up on these yet, but at some point it will. So then what happened is that this computer connected back to the the MeshCentral server, and now I can click on it, and you'll see AMT connected. It will say Intel AMT CIRA right here, and then I can do desktop, hardware KVM, and then it remotely connects. Now the difference between what I did just a minute ago on that worked on the LAN only, and if you're WAN only server, if you're WAN only MeshCentral server, then you can't do local network. Then you would have to activate CIRA, and then AMT would connect over the cloud, and then remote desktop would work. So that's great. I'm going to just show a couple other things here. I'm going to click here. Now, in my back, and I'm just going to point at the machine, this is the AMT machine 15. And so what I'm going to do is go right over here to AMT, so my machine in the back, and I am going to do two things. One is I'm going to open a command shell, and let's see, I'm going to open it as an administrator. And then I am going to run the mesh command tool. So that's what that is right there. And so that's a little tool that's available for download on the MeshCentral website. So when you install your server, you can download the mesh command tool. If you run it as administrator, you can type mesh command AMT info. And what it will show you here is that it will show you CIRA is connected and to the server that it's connected to. So if you want to know if the AMT machine is connected, then you can run AMT command, mesh command AMT info, and you'll see the current connection state. It will also show you if it's wired and wireless are enabled. It will show you a bunch of information here that's interesting. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open Mesh Commander on the local machine. And I happen to have LMS running. This is the correct drivers and software provided by Intel for accessing AMT locally. And so what I did is I actually connected using localhost. So I did localhost, and I cheated here. I added the username and min and the password, the randomized password that MeshCentral had given it. So I'm going to connect. And the reason why I want to bring up Mesh Commander here is that I want to just quickly look at what settings MeshCentral put into AMT to make it connect using CIRA. So there's two tabs on the left that are interesting. One is Internet settings. And in that case, you'll see the domain, the periodic connection, the server. So it's here it says my server port 4433. And in fact, I'm just going to go back to my desktop here. So this is my remote management desktop. And you'll notice that my server, when I start it up, it says MeshCentral AMT server running on port 4433. This is the Intel AMT CIRA port for inbound connections. So that is super important that that port is exposed on the internet. It doesn't have to be that port 4433. You can set it to something else, but just make sure that it's visible on the internet if you're going to use CIRA. Now, the other thing that I want to mention, so we'll just finish up here actually we'll finish up with Mesh Commander here. So you'll notice that I have the server set up. I have the connection, which is periodic every 10 seconds. That means that if CIRA is not connected every 10 seconds, it will try again until it connects. Of course, the AMT is not that patient. It won't try that hard, but it will try. And then environment detection, when you click on that, you'll see a random blob of text. This is the DNS suffix of your home network. So if I put, mycompany.com in here, then whenever AMT is on a network that's mycompany.com, then it will not activate CIRA. So in order for CIRA to always be active, what MeshCentral does is it puts a random string in here. So it makes sure that basically it never matches your DNS suffix of your home network never matches this value. And so CIRA will always connect. So that's good. And then in security settings, there's the root, the MeshCentral root for the port 4433 TLS. So if you look at let's see, right here. So if you look at the port 4433 of your MeshCentral server, it will have a special certificate that is okay for AMT to connect to. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to central.meshcentral.com, port 4433 in HTTPS. There you go. And normally you would see a warning here. Now I did skip the warning earlier, but you'll see a warning that this is an invalid TLS certificate. That is normal. You're supposed to have a certificate that is not trusted by the browser. But it will say here, MeshCentral MPS certificate, Intel AMT computers should connect here. So this is a port for AMT computers. And so one thing you can do if you're having connectivity issues, one thing you can do is go back to the remote computer. So this is my Intel AMT machine. And what you can do is you can connect to port 4433 on the remote computer. And this is what's expected here because it's an untrusted cert. And I'm going to say accept, and you're going to see the message. So that means that the remote computer can connect to, so let's see here, right there. My remote computer right here on the bottom right can connect to my management computer that is on the top right here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my network, my trusty MeshCentral server, and I hope you understood how this worked. So just to recap, we have a mesh command tool that's available so that you can, take a look at the status of AMT. You have a special port in MeshCentral, port 4433, that allows inbound connections for AMT CIRA. That port will have a non-standard, untrusted TLS cert. That is perfectly normal, and that's because the root of that cert will be configured inside AMT. And then when you go inside your device group, you can configure whether you want CIRA or not using here, or if you do fully automatic, then CIRA will always be enabled. One last thing before I leave, I want to go to this machine here, AMT 15, go to the console, which is the agent console, and I want to just show you two commands that are interesting. AMT events, let's see, AMT events, and this shows you all the configuration things that the server is doing to AMT. And then there's also AMT config, and this basically forces the MeshCentral server to reconfigure AMT. And so right now you'll see it just reconfigured, but there's nothing to be done. So what I can do is I'm going to open a second window here. I'm going to switch the policy back to not, actively don't connect to the server and say okay. And what you'll see in the background is that the server that MeshCentral is going to that AMT machine, removing the CIRA periodic timer, removing the MPS, removing the environment detection, and saying OK. And so that will remove CIRA, and now we're back to local here, and we're back to local on all these machines. So that's a fun trick here if you want to use AMT config and AMT events to see what the server is doing on your AMT machine through the agent, then you can do that. So that should allow you to set up your server with Intel AMT. It should allow you to set up CIRA on on remote computers. It should allow you to debug a little bit. If you have any problems with CIRA, know how to use the web page, use the Mesh command tool, use the AMT console. Those things will allow you to see what's going on. And otherwise, you should be able to manage a remote computer, even if it's soft off, even if the OS doesn't work. That is really cool. So hopefully that was clear. Thank you very much.